Hi, welcome to the Pelargonium and Geranium Society YouTube channel. David Taylor on Mr Pelargonium, back with another video. Today I'm actually going to look at my Regal Seedlings. You may remember I did quite a bit of crossing last year of Regals with my Shriven and Pearl, one of my own plants, and a plant called Marie Rudlin. All of the seedlings have now been potted up. They're all growing very strongly. And on returning from my holiday, a number are actually beginning to throw buds, which is really good because it looks as if we're going to see some bloom then from them, maybe next month, I would say mid to late April. But we'll have a look at those and see the complete diversity that I've got, and just showing you how different a single cross can produce such different plants. So we'll have a look at that now. So I'm going to run through, give you and show you an example of all of the individual seedlings that have grown on and show you how different some of them are. So, well, we'll make a start down here. This is quite a large, growing, strong one. And as I say, these were all sown on the 3rd of August last year. And here's the first one. Now, this one in particular is very, very strong growing. You can see it's got a very sort of quite dense growth. And if you just look in the top here, there is a bud just beginning to form. This isn't as advanced as one or two others, which I'll show you, but there is a bud just beginning to form and break. These obviously have not been stopped in any sort of in any way, because I'm wanting them to grow on and bloom as early as possible. So these have not been stopped at all. Now, as I say, they're a cross between Shriven and Pearl, and I'll put a picture up there of Shriven and Pearl, and Marie Rudlin, which I'll put a picture of that up as well, just to show you the cross again, just to remind you. Now, we can actually, see some characteristics. This has got characteristics from the leaf of Shriven and Pearl because it's quite deeply cut, which is what Shriven and Pearl has got. It's got a fairly deeply cut leaf on sort of a mature leaf. But it just shows you this is quite a strong growing seedling. And we would hopefully get a plant that's going to be really quite strong growing. So we await to see. But just to give you an example, we've got another one over here, which I'm just going to grab down. Now this is quite dense in comparison. Look at this one. This is a very dense seedling. This is growing quite strongly, and it's got a lot of strong side shoots growing out from the base, which is perhaps a good example of a plant that's maybe good for exhibition. This one may be too strong and lofty, but it may have a good bloom. We'll have to wait and see. But this one's a bit more sort of tighter and compact in its growth. They've all been more or less treated the same, sown the same date. So it's, they've been grown through the winter and more or less the same time. A little bit further behind this one, there's no sign of any bloom coming on it yet. So that'll be a slightly later bloomer, but it's certainly a bit tighter. Now, of course, breeding always is, as I've said, it's a little bit like the film saying goes, it's like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And this is what makes breeding quite exciting. It's why a number of us do it, because you never quite know what you're going to get. You can always get an idea, because I wanted the good exhibition qualities of Shriven and Pearl, crossed with some of the colour and introducing some mottling. That's what I was hopeful of getting on the blooms from the Marie Rudlin, which is what I was wanting to put into Shriven and Pearl. But because there is so much background genetic makeup to both of those plants, the mixture of genes from all the decades and centuries of breeding that's gone into those plants will come through in some shape or form into these plants that are produced as seedlings. So, we really do not know what we're going to get, which is why it's no good presuming that when you get a seed from a cultivar, you may get something very similar to the seed parent, but more often than not, it's going to be, something a little bit different, which is why we do the breeding that we do. Right, now another example, let's have a look at another one, see if we got something a little bit different again. Right, now this one you can see has got a clear bloom, and that will be out next month. There's absolutely no doubt. That will begin, a couple of those buds will begin to break actually. It's meant to be warming up over the next few days, so this will be blooming certainly in April. So that's going to be quite interesting. Again, it's a little bit like this one. It's quite sort of tall growing, quite strong growing. It's got the cut leaf of Shriven and Pearl. Now, I've got Marie Rudlin over here. This is Marie Rudlin leaf, but it's got a much more open and a what I sort of call a very, very finely cut edge to it. But the lobes are much less prominent than they are on the Shriven and Pearl type leaf. Now I can't really show you a Shriven and Pearl because they're cut back so hard I haven't got any decent sized leaves on them. But that's more or less the leaf of Shriven and Pearl. But you can see Marie Rudlin has got a much, if you like, more rounded leaf with the fine cut on the edge. But this particular seedling, again, like that one, is going to be quite a tall growing plant, so potentially decorative in its nature. Now I've got another one here that's potentially going to be very useful for show work. This is throwing lots of base side shoots. Again, very different really. This one has got a slightly more rounded leaf to it. But this is very dense, throwing a lot of side shoot, a lot of balanced growth. So this particular one, absolutely no sign of bloom on it yet, but this particular one is another one that may be pretty useful for exhibition. I'm going to show you a couple of smaller versions now. This is really tight and compact, growing very nicely, very healthy. No real sign of bloom yet, but it's a little bit slower growing and a little bit tighter. So you can see the difference between these two, which is one of the stronger ones at the back here, and this tight little plant here that's growing. This is going to be very dense, clearly something a little bit different, much more compact. And then to show you something that's even more different, look at this one. Same seedling, sown on exactly the same day, but look at this tiny little thing. This is really small. I've actually just watered this morning, so it may be a little bit on the soft side, but growing quite well. But this is very, very slow growing. Been treated in exactly the same way, but look at the difference in size between these, all sown and grown in exactly the same way over the winter. But this is clearly going to be something very compact and very small. And it just shows you the divergence between the three. So there's three, they're all the same cross. And on that note, it probably is worth sort of discussing about the fact that when you do breed Regals, now last year I did the bulk of this crossing where my glass house was being netted. Now what I do when I grow for exhibition, I do not generally want insects in here, bees, wasps, although early season is a bit early for wasps in this country, but insects that can get on the blooms and potentially cross-pollinate. Now I don't want that, but I did the breeding early in the season when I had the doors and the windows netted, so I put nets over them to stop the flying insects from getting in and potentially cross-pollinating. So when I was doing the cross-pollination that I did last summer, obviously I'm specifically putting the pollen from Marie Rudlin onto the Shriven and Pearl. and you know, we are assuming that that cross is more or less the active cross of all of them. Now, one of the issues with Regals is that they've got very large, open, single blooms with a monumental amount of pollen, and I had a lot of Regals open at the time, so you know, even with a little bit of air movement, it's quite easy for Regal pollen to sort of move about a little bit to get on the stigma of the plants that I was using. So there is potential for the pollen of another plant to have hit on the plants that I was specifically crossing together. So, I mean, there is always the chance that something else may have just dabbed on it. I mean, to produce, you know, this wide variation of bloom. But in the main, I mean, when you're protecting your plants from the insects coming in to do independent cross-pollination, your cross should be really what is coming off of the stigma that ultimately produces the seedlings, but ultimately produces the seed for the seedlings. I'm fairly happy that the crosses I've got are specifically those. Well, they're all definitely from Shriven and Pearl because that was the seed bearer, but I'm hopeful that they were all crossed with the Marie Rudlin, which is what I was hopeful of doing. But as I say, there is a chance that a bit of, you know, pollen from another plant may have gone onto the Shriven and Pearl. So there we are. I just thought I'd put that video in, a little bit of an update on my Regal seedlings. But it's good to see that we're potentially going to see some bloom from them next month, I would say. Certainly that will be coming. I've got one or two others there that are really going to be ready for blooming in April. So something to look forward to. So in the meantime, hopefully get another video going in the next day or two. So I'll see you again very soon. Bye-bye for now.